I first want to acknowledge that today we meet on many different Aboriginal lands, and we at Neighbors pay our respects to the elders of these lands, past, present, and emerging. Neighbors also extend that respect to any Aboriginal person in this webinar today. I myself coming from Gadigal country here in Sydney, and I personally pay my respects to the traditional custodians of these lands. And now I'll hand over to the director of Neighbors, Carlos.
Thank you, Nika, and welcome everybody for today's session. We're going to be doing Neighbors for Hotels customer update, and this webinar is really part of our ongoing engagement with the hotels, hospitality, and accommodation sector. And this, before we go ahead into the session, I thought it was important to reflect on why sustainability in hotels is so important. There's a couple of reasons. One is that the hotel and accommodation sector is actually one of the biggest segments of the built environment, which is one of the biggest segments of the economy. And so is getting to net zero emissions, tackling the waste crisis, getting significant water consumption down in buildings. A lot of those things are actually really hard to achieve without actually getting significant breakthroughs in the hotel sector because it is so big and so important. So that is one part of that. I think the second part is much more personal, that I work in sustainability, but my entire family works in hotels. And so I've been surrounded since I was little by people working on booking systems in hotels and booking.com and Expedia. And so I do have a lot of understanding of the practical challenges in managing hotels and how that is actually, hotels have their own unique challenges and opportunities when it comes to decarbonizing and tackling sustainability in buildings. So I'm really interested in hearing more about all your thoughts as stakeholders. And a lot of our work in Neighbors is about helping you in your sustainability journey and to decarbonize. You're the ones that are actually making the difference in buildings, and our role is to support you. So today what we're going to do is we're going to be providing you with the latest updates on Neighbors. What is it that we've been doing? What is it that's been happening with the Neighbors for Hotels tool? First, we're going to be hearing from Sara Levett, who is fresh from coming back from parental leave recently. She's our acting head of market transformation here at Neighbors, who's going to do a recap of how the Neighbors for Hotels tool has been evolving in the last couple of years. It has been a couple of really interesting things happening with that tool. Then we're going to have a panel discussion with a couple of industry experts, and we're very fortunate to have here today Diana Rico-Roa, who's the director of ESG Plus, who has been working with lots of hotels and Neighbors for a very long time. And also we have Magid Gerges, the director of technical services of CapitaLand Australia. So Sara Levett is going to be moderating that as well, and they will be presenting their experience with Neighbors and sustainability and the challenges and opportunities in specifically to hotels. We're also really excited to have you here in the same virtual room. We can see that hotels during the COVID-19 pandemic, it was a very challenging time for every sector of the economy, but even more so for those sectors that rely on mobility of people, and particularly the hotel sector, more so than almost any other sector really in the economy. But we've seen a really strong bounce back when it comes to sustainability in hotels, especially in the last 12 months. And we are seeing a lot of sustainability projects really starting to gain momentum back again and coming back to the trend that we used to see just before in 2019. So our goal again is to support you on your sustainability journey, and we really want to hear from you throughout this session and beyond. So if you have any questions or thoughts, and we really ask you to work on the chat. We're going to be answering all of those, and we're going to also take some of those questions as well in the session we'll have here today. Now, in the last couple of years, they did mention we have implemented some significant changes to Neighbors for Hotels, which we're going to dive into today. We have done a review of the benchmarks of how Neighbors ratings and star ratings are calculated. We looked into that and deep dive into that. Sarah's going to be talking about that. We also made some changes to recognize some of you in accommodation and hotels who are looking into how do we actually electrify, how do we tackle on-site fossil fuel emissions? And if you have questions about that, we won't do a deep dive on that today, but if you have questions about that, we can talk about that. The short answer is that if you are taking those efforts, Neighbors Ratings will recognize your efforts in the star rating. And also we transition the hotels tool, which used to be in an old IT platform, into a new software platform called NABERS Perform. So there's been a few things happening with this tool, and obviously that has different implications on people on this line, because some of you work a lot with a software, if you're an assessor and you work on that side, but also if you work on the market side of things or in hotels, you may actually be more interested on some of the other updates we have. So it's going to be a little bit of a something for everyone in this session. Now, we encourage you to keep being really active on the chat. I'm going to be on the chat, a lot of my colleagues as well, and obviously our speakers will be looking at that as well. And also along the way, as Neka just saw at the beginning, we're going to have a couple of fun pop-up questions as we go along. So to ask you a few questions pertinent at that point in time. So I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to pass on back to my colleague Neka, and we look forward to engaging with you in this session and hear all your questions.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Carlos. We will now pass on to Sara Levett, the head of markets transformation.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me here today. I was the one that actually did the hotel consultation with a lot of you a few years ago now, so I'll be running through a lot of the things we went through and a bit of a recap and summarizing it as best as we can. So let's go. As most of you know, NABERS is the National Australian Built Environment Rating System. We work really hard to make this multi-factor technical algorithm at the back into a very non-technical, easy outcome for everyone in the market. So as a customer, you get a 1 to 6 star rating, and that's very easy from, if you're not in sustainability, to understand, 1 out of 6 means you've got lots of room for improvement, 6 out of 6 market leading. And it's transferable across sectors, which is a really useful way to see in the future, and it's happening now, people will be procuring that they only want to stay in certain star hotels for NABERS, for and above potentially, and then they're leasing office spaces in 5-star office spaces, so things like that. It's a very easy way to put in strategies in companies, but it's got a technical back end, but we try to make it very easy to you guys. So that's what essentially the outcome is, but there's a lot of work that goes into the process. So the principle of NABERS, a lot of you do know this, probably seen this lovely slide before, but we're very much trying to make sure the ratings are built off metered performance, because that's the real true understanding of a site. Metering is what the bills are made of, what the bills come from. So it's the true place to start. And then we work hard on that multi-factor algorithm, the benchmark, to have that apples for apples comparison. So we can say, or you can say as a customer, that you're the biggest hotel in Darwin and the smallest little one in Tassie Boutique, that they can be compared to. So if it is 6-star, 1-star, you can still be able to compare performance because you get different energy allowances for certain metrics that we put into the algorithm. So essentially that's what the principle of NABERS is built from. We're really trying to make that fair comparison. So it's not just a reporting protocol where energy goes in and then essentially the biggest guy has the most emissions. It's really trying to look at a few different things and give you that fair outcome, which is why it's a star rating. And that's what a lot of the hotel consultation was about, but I'll get to that. I guess essentially trying to again, make you understand a bit more about NABERS ratings if you haven't been into them or using them recently. But as I said, that robust way that we do the algorithm, it takes a lot of work, and we'll go through how we've done our consultation and how we got to the benchmark. But we're really trying to make sure we use metered data. We do try really hard to find that perfect balance, which is a very delicate dance to make it inexpensive. We've got people here today that are assessors. They use an allocated amount of hours to do a rating. Essentially, if you have 100 data points, that's potentially hundreds of hours for an assessor. So it's trying to find that delicate balance of what's a really useful data point that we can get from everyone in Australia in that sector that goes into the multi-factor algorithm that forms the rating, that then is cost effective for the market. So that is kind of the delicate dance that we do when we're trying to do those stakeholder consultations, and then forming that benchmarking as I've spoken about. what makes NABERS different? The slide will move shortly. We do try to, again, just NECA, if you could change slides. Perfect. Thank you. So what ratings can a hotel get? We have now available for everyone. We have the energy rating, and more recently is the REI. So energy rating is emissions. It's looking at what is your actual energy usage at site for that 12-month period. And that's always going to be really useful to deliver cost savings, and you're always trying to reduce energy usage in general. On top of that, the REI is really helpful, the renewable energy indicator. If you have a power purchasing agreement on site, and there's all these other ways that you can be utilizing renewable energy, if you're doing that, then you get the benefit in the REI. So potentially, if all your electricity that you're procuring is from a renewable source, the REI will show that, and it will show that benefit. So you can have the energy rating along with the REI, which is really helpful. We've got the water rating. We have waste verification for hotels, which is really useful as well. So kilograms per room. And more recently, the carbon neutral certification has also come in. So why we rate? We do try to create a product that is the most cost effective, as I was saying before, for you. So you can have something that's not just a reporting protocol, but an indicator of your performance in the market. Utilizing NABERS ratings as a part of your carbon neutral journey is really important and really helpful. You can say, try get sites to 5-star NABERS average and then move towards a carbon neutral outcome. It's very helpful in forming your sustainability strategy. Even to the basic level of a NABERS rating is a physical audit on site by an assessor that's making sure your meters are validated and from the get-go bills are correct. So that's sometimes where first ratings for buildings start. And then for the teams that aren't into sustainability, really trying to make sure that they might not be as interested in the emissions and the climate change crisis and trying to do all the right things. I think most people in the room here are on that journey, but speaking the cost savings language to all the other parts of the business, where if you do improve your energy rating by 2 stars, you will save a lot in cost savings, and making sure that that capital works team on site are really understanding that any huge procurement happening on site, especially if it has strong energy efficiency focus to it, can actually save and deliver on cost savings. So NABERS is really helpful in mapping out that journey. We've got a nice little one here where you can say, from 3 to 5 stars, some of our calculations on average for hotels, you can nearly save $500,000, which is a lot. And 3 to 5 stars for water is 55,000. So there's a really good way, especially if you're the one and you're one and only in your team of sustainability, starting a rating, doing a lot of capital works changes on sites, and rating continuously, so you're getting the data accurate each year. And then over time, you've got a very easy demonstration of success, case studies, and you can sell back to the business, all the great things the team's done. And it's a really good way to motivate and get everyone understanding. We've got some of our really powerful graphs here showing why NABERS, is now in so many sectors, but we did start in offices, and we have been in offices for over 20 years now, well over 20 years. But essentially this graph is showing the reduction in energy intensity year on year. So rating each year really just delivers that focus of teams, and the more teams understand what NABERS is and trying to reduce energy, then they start to reduce emissions. And over time, as a sector, the office sector has had a 37% reduction in energy intensity, which is really powerful. And that's really fantastic to see. And we hope to have that and see that across more sectors. We have a voluntary sector as an example here, because offices is mandated. There is a legislation around office energy ratings, but the shopping centres here is a voluntary rating, and that's nearly over 25% reduction in emissions. It has been around less than the offices, but they also have seen a huge improvement in their energy intensity over time. I'll pass back to NECA to do a poll.
Thank you so much. That was very insightful, Sara. Thanks a lot. I'll put on our second poll shortly, so you can as I said, we can get your thoughts and we can help you and support you better. They are very easy questions. We just want to know how easy it is for you to get a rating, what are your biggest barriers, and then what could us neighbors do differently so we can support the hotel industry better. The last question is we left a bit of space so you can write a response. Fantastic. And well, everyone is doing the poll. I'll pass on to Sara again to just give us an overview of how the NABERS Hotel tool has evolved.
Thanks, Neka. So the history of the tool started in 2007. Some of you were in the initial consultation, so thank you for still being around with us. Over 64 hotels were, we took a lot of data from over 64 hotels across Australia to form the benchmark. And I'll go into kind of the details behind that in future slides. But essentially by 2010, we did release the hotel tool. And in 2020, with myself, we went through an industry-wide consultation where we got about 35 hotels data and 13 service departments. And we did try and mostly worked with hotels across Australia. And that was an interesting consultation. We did get a lot of work done, but it was during COVID. So interesting times, but we did get to a benchmark adjustment in 2021. That's now been around for a little bit. And then we moved to Perform, which is just more of a useful new program system that we have that, again, we'll show you a couple slides on that. But starting probably from the beginning of the process of developing a benchmark. So yeah, to start a benchmark, over 60 points, I think was in the original consultation for hotels, where we were trying to understand what data can you get across from every stakeholder in that sector across Australia that's easy to get, reliable, and consistent. So we looked at lots of different data points, which is something that does come up a lot in questions, and I'm sure we'll get something similar today because people say, why don't you consider this? Why don't you look at that? So originally, and in the review of the consultation, many data points are considered, and sometimes some look more favorable than others, but it's really that piece of like, is it reliable? And is it consistent across, different chains which have different international partners? Reliable, consistent, and easy to get. So that was the data gathering exercise. And then, is it statistically significant? Obviously it has to be relevant to energy usage, because essentially we're trying to do that apples for apples comparison. If it does correlate to high energy usage, which for hotels is, star quality rating, and we'll get into a lot of those metrics shortly. But essentially, the effect of that data point to be statistically significant with energy and water. And then we plotted onto a graph, regression analysis, and to try understand, of all the hotels in the sector and the different energy allowances, this will be the benchmark and how we form that 0 to 6 star rating. So it is a bit of a process and it does take a bit of time, but it's well worthwhile for that easy, 1 to 6 star outcome. So the consultation that we went through, which I think is on, firstly had a lot of these participants on the screen here, a lot of you here today, so thank you. It really helps because obviously to get a good rating, you need a robust amount of players in the market with lots of different styles of hotels to work with us so we can have, that scale of different energy usage and get that proper benchmark. So the more data, the better always for us, and it really helps us form a robust benchmark. So thanks again for all the participants involved in the consultation. But the consultation in the end was about, so again, for the 2020 review, when this is pretty similar to what happened in 2007, we kind of went out to market with all the data points that we could get. And it was 20 different inputs were considered. And then we looked at what was statistically significant, as I spoke to, with what was useful, what correlates most to energy usage. So size of a hotel was the one that came out very favorably. Climate, obviously wherever you are in Australia makes a huge difference on your heating and cooling. The function and conference facilities makes a really big difference, and also the occupancy of that space as well. And star quality was something that the 2020 consultation went into a huge deep dive with, and then some other smaller things of laundry services and, the gyms and pools. But essentially, in the 2020 review, we had a very strong look at star quality rating, which I think will be, yes, in this slide. So star quality rating at first was one of the interesting ones that came up, because essentially a lot of hotels in Australia are self-rating, and there's obviously an industry standard that people are getting rated, but a lot of people potentially are self-rating. And the outcome of the consultation was that essentially, if you don't use star quality rating, you're going to have to try get a lot of those variables that come and form the star quality rating in isolation, which would increase assessor time, which increase fees. And it's also just a lot more onerous on the hotel person to deliver all those things in isolation as opposed to the star quality rating. So one of the key outcomes was then maybe the star quality, after looking at all the other outputs that could be an option, was the most appropriate, and that was agreed by the stakeholders in the consultation. And from that, though, since a lot of hotels are self-rating, perhaps NABERS, and this is what we did, we created a checklist. So in the original criteria for the star quality rating by the ATIC, I think there's over 200 different things that form what their star quality rating is. So we just worked with consultants to try find, again, the metrics most useful and correlating to energy in a hotel. And that's why our checklist we've tried to refine it to, again, not be too onerous, not too many extra hours for assessor, not too costly for hotel customers, but the checklist is then the 12 different parts of a rating that do relate to, 12 different parts of a services to the hotel that do relate to energy usage, that do indicate a potential self-rating outcome. So in no way is this replacing the industry standards. When you actually, we always want to say we preference go to get certified by ATIC, get a proper star quality rating. But in the absence of that, you can self-rate using the checklist, and that kind of helps form the NABERS rating in our platform. So I'm sure we'll have a few questions on that, but that was really the main update on that consultation. It was that we went back to market, we looked at the options, what was available then. Star quality was the one that was a bit, people had the most opinion around, some weren't too happy with it. And so it was, but in the end, everyone wanted to still use it because they understood the process would be longer without it, in the absence of it. But we worked on that checklist to try answer to that question of making sure it's high integrity. So it's not just someone can put in whatever they want. They're using the checklist, and that should form a similar-ish star quality rating. So I'm sure we'll get some questions of that soon when we go out to you all. But for the moment, that was, the main outcome of the consultation. So since then, we have been working with getting the rating. I don't know if any of you worked with the old school NABERS rate, but Perform is beautiful. It's very frictionless. It's easier to use. It should be faster for an assessor to do a rating. The point of it is to just make the process of rating for an assessor as well as a customer easier. And a lot of the feedback from the market is saying that it has. So Perform just means the process that an assessor, or the platform that they use to do the rating, and the customer has not as much of an interface with Perform, but they do get a couple emails back and forth to make sure they're happy with the rating and things like that. And then on the right here is the actual certificate. If some of you haven't seen a certificate, this is what the product, the outcome is. So you get a NABERS energy rating, you have your renewable energy indicator, the name of the site, and how long it's valid till. So they're valid for 12 months. And the idea is to be trying to rate each year, and at the same time be working with your teams to enhance your capital works programs and get better ratings. We also have recently released our annual report, which does have a full section on hotels. Encourage you to have a look at it. Very useful to see. And we do that every year. So yeah, it's kind of always a good little landmark to kind of see, especially for hotels. We've been getting more and more participation. So good to see where NABERS is across the market, and maybe makes you understand that, that again, that star rating across sectors can be quite useful to transfer 2 stars here can also correlate to another sector of 2 stars there. So very useful. Have a look. We spent a lot of time on it. Would love you to look at it. And recently we have done and released a case study with ProInvest. So really useful way to see their journey in sustainability. They're doing so many amazing things. And they're aligned to trying to get towards carbon neutral, and they use NABERS. So really good way to see how they have been working on their sustainability strategy and all the capital works changes that's been happening at their site. We encourage you to have a look at that. Now with waste. So hotels have such an amazing opportunity to deliver cost savings again if your contracts for waste are in the right format to incentivize waste reduction. So NABERS also has a verification platform. So we have a way to, there's a few ways you can work with NABERS on waste. In the future, we do aim to have a rating, which is again, that multi-factor algorithm. But for the moment, the market is, we're just trying to see who's interested and who wants to track waste. So we have this platform, which is a bit different to how, again, Perform is just more, you put the rating in for energy and you get your certificate. For waste, you actually can put your data in and see your waste performance. So you can see month-on-month data. That first graph on the left there shows that, I don't know, you probably can't see my mouse move, but the first graph really shows that potentially if you've got, a whole waste stream missing for a month, the colors are very easy to understand. Oh, data missing, let's find it. So trying to find easy ways to pick up problems and make sure you've got that comprehensive data set, because the better the data set, obviously the better result of your tracking your waste management. And then some of the key metrics in waste is intensity. So obviously, if you're a huge hotel and we compare you to the area, that will show that's a more fairer way to check your waste management than just saying what's your total waste generated, because a small hotel with smaller area. So it's that kind of the fairest comparison that you can have with waste at the moment for kind of understanding the differences between buildings. So definitely, if you want to understand more about your waste management, feel free to ask us any questions on it. It is a really useful tool. So there's 2 ways to work. You can just use the platform in isolation for 12 months, or you can work towards getting a verification. And a verification is when you work with an assessor, and the assessor would do all the same steps that they would do to do a proper rating. So they're going to site, they're doing bin audits, they're understanding all your, the volume of waste going to downstairs, doing contamination audits. And it's a whole process that would be part of a waste rating, but it's just kind of getting you set up towards that. So that's something that can also happen with hotels. And we do have a bit more discounts on that at the moment if people are interested in waste verifications. So any waste queries, and also with waste is something very, very this is NABERS trying to respond to our circular economy growing demand. Everyone wants to know circular economy and know how to do it. This is really circular economy is trying to make sure, obviously, a material is kept in a Mobius loop for life. You do not want a plastic bottle to go into a linear red bin and end up in landfill and rot for 200 years and leak little emissions up for those. No, sorry, to 500 years, I think now they're saying for plastics. So essentially, you want that plastic bottle to go in a yellow bin and again, finish in a Mobius loop. That's what circular economy is trying to do. So what the MRS, our material recovery score, is trying to show, it's like the REI, the Renewable Energy Indicator. It's trying to visibly show your circularity. So essentially, if your yellow bin, your plastic in your yellow bin is going to a supplier that assures that that whole process is getting, like that, all those plastics are being made into plastic again, you get the highest color of green, which is that dark green at the top, and it works its way down to grays and pretty much landfill. So the point of this is per waste stream, starting to ask those questions in your contracts, making sure contractors are sharing that information. And also the first process is usually to double check that. In my experience, they can kind of say things, and then when you're double checking it, you find out that that's not where it's actually going. But really, this is such a big piece that the whole waste industry really needs to get on board with. And waste contractors are really starting to. So understanding with every bin leaving site, where's it going, what's happening to it, and is it consistently going to those places? And if it's not, are there other options available for those for commingled materials as the main one, and organics for hotels as well. That can we form better outcomes? And essentially with hotels too, you can work on also reducing food waste. You know, can we be trying to make sure we're not cooking as much, we're reducing that kind of eliminating the process before it's even happened, so you're not always, you know, spending so much on waste. So the MRS is something that you get when you do your verification reports, where you understand your circularity and you work to improve it. And a really good way to show the business. People do hear the buzzword of circular economy, but they never know how to kind of, you know, share it, whereas that's what that MRS score is trying to do. Other things that we have going around government, we've got bin trim programs. Bin trim is a cool first step for waste as well. They have released a free online platform that does, it is a kind of a one-off quick check of your bins and understanding your waste performance, but it is a good starter. So a good one to use if you the budget's not there yet and you need to start your journey. Energy and water starters, Zoe manages that as well with NECA. So they are really about trying to encourage first-time raters. If you haven't rated before, New South Wales only at the moment, but really trying to, if you haven't rated before, you can there's discounts and free ratings to really start that journey. There's a whole green finance, which is a really cool new space that NABERS has worked with, where you're potentially, you know, mapping your NABERS ratings over time to getting green finance from different institutions. And ESS as well is a way that you can also use NABERS ratings to pretty much be able to claim money again from the New South Wales government for potential energy emissions saved. So all really good funding opportunities and all things our team can help you with. And so this is an example of the ESCI. We'll go back to that slide one. It's a good, this is an example of what you can get from an ESCI, so the ESS program, which I was just speaking to. So potentially upgrading your hotel 1/2 star. Sometimes the funding available you could get is around 64,000. There's obviously variables involved and you get to do the process, but yeah, just as an example of, you know, what funding is available from the New South Wales government is pretty good. But I'll pass it back to NECA to do the poll. Thanks, guys.
Great. Thank you so much, Sara. Thank you for taking us through how the tool has evolved over the years. And as Sara said, I'll do our last poll, I promise. And this poll is also 3 questions that you will get on your screen. We just want to hear about what are the biggest drivers to get a NABERS rating. Then you can choose as many as you want. Then we want to see how does the hotel sector need to reduce emissions, and also you can select as many as you want. And then finally, what else would you like to see from us, like webinar, events, newsletters, working groups? So yeah, feel free to answer all those questions. And I'll move on to our next item in the agenda, that is our panel discussion. So we will have a panel discussion with different industry representatives. So I'll be asking questions to our panels, and if you want to ask them any questions, feel free to put them on the chat box in Zoom, and we will try to answer as many as we can. So I invite all of our panelists to turn your camera on, and I can see the camera it's on, so that's fantastic. And I'll welcome Diana Rico-Roa, Director of ESG Plus, then Magid Gerges, the Director of Technical Services of CapitaLand Australia, and then Sara Levett, the Acting Head of Market Transformation at NABERS. So my first question is for Diana. You've got a wide experience working as a NABERS assessor. And could you tell us a bit more about what type of hotels are seeking NABERS rating?
Yes, of course. Thank you for having me. So, well, in the beginning, it was primarily adopted by luxury city hotels, apartments, service apartments, and boutique hotels. From there, you could start seeing emerging some leaders like ProInvest, Fraser Hospitality, and CapitaLand, where they're starting rating their properties year on year and working closer with the program just to fine-tune the tool, which is, like a very important part of the process, as Carlos mentioned, because this is built for you to use. So it's important, this feedback. And they're just using the tool to help set and monitor internal targets, and some of them to even access green loans. So in the case study that we just published, we see ProInvest has received 39 million, a green loan of 39 million. That is fantastic. And that's all on the back of a 5-star NABERS energy rating commitment at the holiday in Melbourne. So that's the kind of projects we started seeing in the beginning. Lately, though, we're starting to see interest from a variety of hotels and accommodations of different kinds of sizes. Typically, they will have an ESG strategy in place, and they're looking to benchmark their environmental performance. So, for example, just last week, we helped one of these accommodations secure an energy and water starter offer grant, where they're planning to, benchmark their property for the first time. They're about to implement a large solar PV and finishing some upgrades. So they just want to know where they were before and after. And after we do the first rating, we're going to give them some additional opportunities of improvement. So I think we're going to start seeing more of this. And since the new SEP regulations and policies came into place, we start receiving inquiries around the new mandatory disclosure for large new hotels. So up until then, the adoption has been voluntary, but now we're starting to see those affected by the mandatory disclosure.
That's great. Thank you, Diana. It's great to say that the rating can unlock all those different opportunities and different size of hotels and different shapes and stages of the journey can use the hotel. Thank you for your comments. My next question is for Magid. I know you've been, you've had many hotels and service apartments rated with NABERS. Could you tell us a bit what you are using your NABERS rating for?
Oh, thanks, Mecca, for having us over here. Basically, for those who don't know about CapitaLand is a global real estate investment. Our headquarters is basically based in Singapore. We have a saying here in CapitaLand that sustainability is the heart of everything we do. And we are committed for achieving, of course, net zero carbon emission by 2050. In regards to NABERS, we started our journey with NABERS, I believe, in 2019 and worked with Sara closely during 2020. We use NABERS basically to demonstrate our commitment to sustainability, meet any regulatory or reporting requirement. NABERS helps us to basically attract our environmental conscious guests and investors by showcase our commitment and environmental performance. Moreover, we're using usually NABERS for a benchmarking. So we have a group of portfolio. We like always to compare our portfolio performance, not only financial, but also the environmental and the ESG performance. You would be surprised to know that also many of our guests are always asking about what sustainability programs we are using, and we always showcase about NABERS. Government entities and corporate, when they book, usually ask for the NABERS certificates, and as higher star rating, we become a preferable destination for them. As a global company, also, we have some sort of commitment for reporting and being transparency, especially we use lots of global reporting platform like GRESB, which is a global real estate sustainability benchmark. And we're currently working on another certificate also. It's the Global Sustainability Tourism Council, and they are both asking for certificates that should validate our environmental performance. And NABERS is very important, comes here to demonstrate such commitments.
That's great. Thank you, Magid. It's great to say that CapitaLand has these strong commitments, and you can get to those commitments by using the neighbors rating. Thank you. I want to circle back to Diana about the difference between measuring and benchmarking. Why is benchmarking important?
Well, benchmarking is a great way to understand your hotel's performance. It just allows you to compare your hotel with industry standards, peer buildings, and within your own portfolio, just placing it within the larger context of things. So having your metrics validated by an industry trusted third party, it gives you your environmental performance claims more credibility. So I think that's why it's important. And with neighbors, you can rely on a government-backed framework as a guide through your data collection and the quality of your data verification, which is key. It's the key ingredient for a good benchmark. So in this way, you are de-risking your communications from greenwashing by citing verified outcomes. So that's a way that benchmarking can help you. And the neighbors' energy and water benchmarking results can be used in many ways for asset management purposes, for annual reports, for portfolio managers to apply for a green loan, or for your brand. So as consultants, we end up supporting the different clients' teams. We've seen recently the sustainability-related questions in the corporate travelers questionnaires have increased, and is very common for the sales and marketing teams to reach out for help in understanding the certified results so they can communicate it back to their clients. So, with the neighbor certificates, you can display the credentials to your guests, but the golden nuggets are in the neighbors report. So we do have a bit of use on that. Also measuring the benchmarking the hotel's waste is important, because there is no point in investing and putting a lot of effort in responsible sourcing of items if you're not paying a closer attention of what's happening in your loading dock. So start by measuring and benchmarking the waste that you're sending out of the hotel so you can be more effective in your waste aversion strategy. So at the moment, as Sara mentioned, you can use a waste platform and have a waste data verification report with neighbors. But unfortunately, there is no yet enough hotel waste data to establish a benchmark. So it is important for more hotels to participate and help build the benchmark that is so desperately needed in this waste-intensive sector. And the last thing I'll say on measuring and benchmarking is that our experience is that the benchmarking process itself has been instrumental to uncover issues on complex sites. So by using the neighbors framework, we can define the boundaries, first of all, of what is needed to be assessed, and then pinpoint what is missing in order to meet the minimum requirements. So if a hotel cannot achieve an accredited rating, it's because there are some important issues that need to be resolved. This can be related to data available or not available, the metering and monitoring systems, or just the understanding of the site. So if you don't know where to start by benchmarking.
Thank you so much, Diana. And in this topic, Sara, we hear questions about why Neighbors Hotel use occupied rooms rather than number of people in the room in their benchmark. Could you explain us a bit what's the reason?
Yeah, so both times in 2007 and 2020, the number of people was one of the data inputs considered. It unfortunately isn't a data point that we can get consistently across different hotels in Australia. It was just it was one that some hotels do well, others don't do well. It wasn't consistent, it wasn't reliable, it wasn't the same definition from across hotels. So unfortunately, it was one that just it wasn't able to be used. And the better metric that was robust and reliable across the whole nation, I guess, and all the different companies and that make up the sector was the rooms.
Thank you, Sara. And I'm a bit conscious of the time, so before we move on into the Q&A question, I'll have one last question for Magid. You've done energy and water. What other areas are you focusing on? What's next for your hotels?
Well, apart from using the energy and water data for upgrade projects and all of that. We are currently working, we started this year actually with Neighbors Waste. It's a journey we started this year in order to build a responsible resource management action plan for all our buildings in Australia. And Neighbors Tools basically give us this opportunity by analyzing the data and building a waste benchmark. I was surprised about the wastage that it goes to the landfill that we could have circulate around and reduce our impact on the environment from the waste. And we are working on a plan for circular economy as well. And as Sara said, they are starting the process. We hopefully we can join you when you start next time in the platform. Yeah.
That's great. That's great to hear that waste is gaining momentum. That's fantastic. Well, thank you for the panelists for the engaging and insightful discussion today. Your contribution and experience, it's been invaluable. And now let's open the floor to the audience for the Q&A questions that is gonna be run by Zoe Baker. I'll pass to you, Zoe.
Thanks so much, panel. I think we've been entirely efficient because we do not have any questions from the audience. So well done, thank you. If you don't mind, I'd like to ask a couple of questions from the panelists, just as we're wrapping up. I guess for Magid and maybe Diana as well, have there been any surprises when you've been going through the rating process? Either things that were harder than you expected or potentially some low-hanging fruits that you didn't know were there?
Diana, would you like to start or?
Please go ahead, Magid. I'll follow you.
So I'm not representing an owner only, but I'm an auditor as well. And sometimes what surprised me is the quality of the data which we get from the hotel operation team. And even from the retailers themselves. Through COVID, lots of data was like an estimate, and we had to put lots of effort to make sure that these estimates are correct. And even after COVID, we noticed that the metering and the retailers, the accuracy of the data wasn't as much as great. And this is basically make us put lots of effort in getting all the data, communicating with the retailers. So this is maybe something that neighbors could look into it in speaking on a broader wide with the suppliers or their connections to emphasize. I understand, for instance, that Sydney of Water right now, they are doing this digital metering thing and collecting of data on the platform. So this is one of the initiatives, but how about the rest of the retailers, some control measures for the quality of data?
Yeah, I'll follow that by saying that, like with any benchmarking tool, defining the boundaries are very important. And with this particular sector, I think is quite unique because each hotel can have a different arrangement. So you really have to come in and understand how this hotel is being used. And work closely with the program so you can accurately define the boundary of what you're going to be assessing. Yeah. And in doing that, I agree with Magid, there's an opportunity to improve the metering and monitoring of these buildings. So you can isolate, the hotel and just accurately benchmark it. So we saw this particularly doing the carbon neutrality rating at Capri in Brisbane. Where it was really important to define the boundary just to see what emissions we needed to calculate and consequently offset and just put into the plan of what needs to be mitigated in the future. And a tricky one was a restaurant because restaurants, sometimes can be inside the hotel, owned and operated by the hotel owner, but sometimes they are just next to the hotel, owned by the hotel, the space, but it's actually leased to a third party. So that falls outside the hotel, control. So all these tricky bits just comes with experience, and just working closely with the program and neighbors being so responsive, because you work with a program that is not responsive, you don't go anywhere. So yes, I think this has been one of the interesting findings that we had in this particular sector.
Thanks both. Okay, apparently there's an issue with the chat. We did test that and that was working, but Mel, you have your hand raised and I have switched you on so you can unmute yourself and ask that question if you'd like to.
Great. Can you hear me now?
We can, thank you.
Thanks. With office buildings being or having the NABERS rating program for a long time and hotels being fairly new into it, is it possible to get information on what some of those office buildings have done, as in changed or capital works, so we can import them into the hotel industry?
I'm happy to take that. Yes, so there's lots of case studies on our website. We're very much, what we love to do is obviously share wins between stakeholders and especially across sectors. I tried to allude to it a lot in my presentation, but yeah, making sure every capital, a few things I can think off the top of my head, but making sure every capital works program or every capital works upgrade happening on site, procurement specifications actually specify energy efficiency as a key priority. So when the decision makers are looking at the different options to go on site, one of the key things that I've always seen as a win, in my previous role, I was in the private sector actually implementing this, was that you'd see that potentially this lift will deliver this amount of energy savings to this lift, and then cost is also obviously part of their procurement, but energy efficiency actually being a part of the decision making is such a crucial trigger for success, really. Once that's in the procurement team's pipeline, that's in their specs that they're sending out each time they're doing any upgrade on site, capital works, and then also operationally, really making sure on site the teams are aware of energy efficiency, where they're trying to get to in sustainability, making sure that sustainability strategy everyone's informed by it. They know what they need to do, and getting them motivated, because as soon as you always see the shift when site teams start to, what can you actually change? Can you pre-cool a building? Can you turn this off an hour earlier? And all of that delivers energy efficiency savings. So the office sector is just extremely advanced in that. They have dedicated sustainability teams working with on-site teams that have different people on site. There's a building analytics, there's lots of new names for it, but you can have different sub-meters on site with different alerts, along with the contractors and the HVAC teams all working together to try operationally improve and reduce energy emissions. And then the whole capital works team making sure any capital works happening on site does improve performance and actually just has energy efficiency is a part of the decision making. Does that answer your question in a nutshell, or?
Yes, thank you very much.
No worries.
And we are always looking out for new case studies. So if you are a hotel and you've got a good win story, please let us know so that we can turn that into a story we can share with others. And apologies about the issue with the chat. If there were any other questions, raise your hand and I'll switch you on. But I feel like we've had a really robust sort of covering a lot of different topics, pretty broad range.
Sorry, there was a question before from Paul Edwards, and I'm wondering if he might still want to ask that question. He had his hand up for a little while and then he put it down. Paul, sorry to put you on the spot.
I hit that button by mistake. I do apologize.
Well, hi, Paul. Great to have you join us.
No, that's fine. Thank you.
All right, I'll hand back over to you, Neka. We've got just a couple minutes to wrap up. Thanks so much, everyone.
Yeah, thank you so much for the Q&A. And again, as Zoe said, apologize for the issue that we had with the webinar chat. So I just want to thank you, everyone, for being part of today's webinar. We've discussed NABERS tools for hotels, the evolution in consultation with the market, the benefits, and the future of the hotel industry. So our panelists and speakers, they've been instrumental in today's discussion. So I'm really grateful for their insights today. So yeah, stay involved and share your thoughts. Your feedback is important to us, and we want to work together to make the hotel industry more sustainable. So thank you again for being part of today's webinar, for today's discussion, and we look forward to continue collaborating and progressing together. Thank you so much. See you next time.
Thank you.